Hello, my name is Kim and welcome to the Embroidered Elephant channel. Today I am going to be doing a video where I look at all of the crochet projects I finished in 2024 and giving them a rating. I will be flying through these and not giving too much details because I don't want the video to be too long. However, I have rated them in 4 different areas. The first is the pattern. Was it easy to understand? Was it clear? Did I enjoy it? Second is the yarn. Did I enjoy it? Was it nice? Did it use a lot? Was it difficult to work with? Third is the usage. Have I used the project a lot since I've made it? Is it usable? Is there a flaw in it maybe? So I've knocked some points off. And the last one is overall score. So I've scored all of the projects I made on all 4 of those parts out of 5. I haven't given too many details on these projects just because I finished quite a lot this year and I don't have all the details to hand for the different yarn and the different patterns. For ones that I know, I will say where it's from. However, if you do want more details, the best place to go is to my podcasts. I do a podcast every month, every couple of months, where I go over the projects I've made during that time. So if there's a particular project that you would like to know more about or like to see a bit better, go to the corresponding podcast. They're all linked on my channel. So for example, if you want to know more about a project that happened in August, go to that specific podcast. I think for all of the podcasts, I have the months in the title somewhere, so that should help. For any projects that I haven't covered already, so maybe the end of November, definitely during December, I will go over them in more detail in January when I do the first podcast of the year. It'll be podcast 18, I think, where I will go over in more detail the pattern, the yarn I used, and everything in between really. So in January I made 2 projects. The first one was finishing my Portugal shirt. I made it with yarn that I got from Portugal, hence the name, and I used a pattern that I bought on Etsy. The pattern was good, the yarn was okay, but it had better results because it was sentimental. The usage is 1 because I haven't actually used it since I made it, which is a shame, but reflecting on it, I don't use shirts that don't have sleeves. Most of the time I usually wear t-shirts which have a bit of a sleeve, so I might have to adapt the pattern and somehow work out how to put some sleeves on it because I've got some of the yarn left, so it would go. My overall score for the project is a 2. Again, this is mainly due to the fact that I haven't worn it since I've made it and I spent quite a bit of time on it as well. I think just maybe the yarn wasn't perfect for the pattern, or I tried too hard to get the pattern to fit the yarn and vice versa. The next project for January is the Portsmouth scarf. I really enjoyed the pattern, so I've given it a 5. It just used the granny square stitch, so it crocheted up pretty quickly and I didn't have to think about what I was doing while I was doing it. The yarn was a 3. The grey or the darker black colour in it was quite difficult. It kept on splitting and there was sort of one thread that ran through it. I have no idea what that noise was. So the black yarn had a thread running through it, so the yarn itself sort of rested on the outside, so you had to keep pulling it to straighten it out, if that makes sense. So that was a little bit difficult. I don't know why it's got so dark. Just ignore that sound in the background if you can hear it, because otherwise I'm never going to finish the video. Usage is 2. I don't even know where it is, to be honest. And the overall star for this scarf is a 3. In February I made 4 projects technically. The first one was a red jumper that was in my works in progress to be finished. I ended up unpicking that because I was never going to wear thread. I don't tend to wear very bright colours apart from yellow. The pattern was 0. This was a pattern I came up with myself. Yarn was a 2. It was from Hobby. It was acrylic and it just bobbled quite quickly considering I hadn't even worn it. I had unpicked it a couple of times, but I would never expected it to bobble that quick. Usage, not applicable. Overall, not applicable. It was never finished. Next was the crochet Christmas chains. The pattern was a 5, so easy, don't have to think about it. It comes together really quickly. Yarn 5, used a lot of scraps, great for scrap busting, and I used a variety of different yarns as well. Usage 5, I have it up in my front room and lots of people have complimented it, saying that it looks really nice. I look at it all the time, I love it. So overall, I would say it's not perfect, so it's not a 5. I would give it a 4. I love the pattern, love the yarn, love everything about it, but it's not a project that I would dote on very much, if that makes sense. Next was the crochet hearts. So this was a work in progress at the start of the year. I decided to make them into cards, so I made them into Christmas cards. The pattern was not applicable because I already had them. Yarn not applicable again. The usage was 4 because they make really cute cards, if I do say so myself. Overall, again, not applicable because I didn't make them myself. I had bought the crocheted hearts. And lastly, in February was the tie knot headband by Lottie and Albert. The pattern was a 5, it was really easy. The yarn was a 3. I managed to stash bust some of the yarn, all of it I think. Usage 4, I wore it quite a lot and then unfortunately the headband inside it broke, so I haven't been able to wear it much, but that is no fault of the project. It was just, I bought a cheap headband and it snapped. And overall, it's a 3. Again, not life-changing, not terrible. I feel quite good about it. I just wish I could wear it still, but that's something that maybe needs to be repaired again and found a better solution for, I guess. Next is March. I made 2 items. So the first one was the promenade bag. Pattern was 5. It was so easy. It was so easy to understand. I don't think I made any additions apart from to use more yarn up because I had a certain amount that I wanted to use. Yarn 4. The yarn was fine. Sentimentally, it meant a lot. It was from a family member. However, it was flat yarn, and if you've ever used that, you'll know that it's not quite the same as using normal round yarn. It was fine. I believe it's cotton, or it has a lot of cotton in it, so it's great for chucking in the washing machine if you get it dirty and bring it out again. Usage 5, I keep it in my handbag and I use it quite a lot. Overall 5. So again, not life-changing, but it is something that I use. Probably I use one of the most out of all of the projects I've made. Second finished project in March was the scrubby bath mitt. Now, the pattern was a 3, but I did adapt it because my yarn was a different weight and I wanted to use all of it up, but I didn't necessarily have the yarn that I needed, so it was my fault. But the pattern was 3. Yarn was a 2. It was quite difficult to work with. I didn't enjoy working with it. I was just working with it so that I could get it out of my stash. Usage 3. I've used it a few times, but not that much. Overall 2. In April, I made 3 projects. So the first was the beige long cardigan, which I shortened. The pattern was a 4, quite repetitive, but really easy to do, and it came together really quickly. Yarn 3, it was fine. There was nothing great about it. It was fine. Usage 4, out of all of the crocheted jumpers and cardigans and things I've made, I use it probably the most. Overall 3.5. The main comment that I would make is because I used acrylic yarn, it is quite heavy. Next are some tulips. The pattern was really easy, so 4. The yarn was pure wool and it really hurt my hands, so that's a 2. The usage for, I do have them on display in my flat. They look really pretty. They are all coordinating colours of blues and purples. My husband's favourite flower is a tulip as well, so that's quite sentimental. And lastly, I made the teddy bear basket. So the pattern was really easy, so 4. The yarn was quite difficult to work with because it was so thick, so that's a 2, but it looks quite pretty. Usage is a 4. I use it quite a lot. I knocked a point off because it's not as stable as I would like it to. I think I could change that, I just need to know how to. And overall I give it a 4 because it's super cute. In May I finished one project, and that was the crochet bunny teether. The pattern was a 5, it was really easy. The yarn again was a 5, it was really nice to work with. Usage, it's very usable. I don't have a child yet, so it hasn't been used in that aspect, but it's a 5 because it would get a lot of use, hopefully. And overall, I give it a 4. In June, I finished 3 projects. So the first was granny square wrist warmers. So I already had the granny squares. They had been made and I bought them as a finishing off project, if that makes sense. So I'd already bought the granny squares from someone who was having a de-stash, and I just wanted to make them into wrist warmers. I just used a double crochet along the back to make them into wrist warmers. The pattern, not applicable because I didn't make them, like the actual granny square. The yarn was 3 or 4. It was fine. It was just basic acrylic yarn. It didn't feel great, it didn't feel awful, it was just yarn. Usage 3. They're very usable. I have taken them to market a few times to sell them. I have put them on Vinted as well, so they're very usable. I don't personally use them because I've already got some wrist warmers that I use. And overall it's 3. Next was a blue tulip cross stitch cushion that I made. So technically it's, well, not technically at all, it's not a crochet project, but it took so long and it does use yarn that I did pop it in my finished projects. So the pattern was 4, it was quite easy to understand once I'd got my head around it. The yarn was fine, I couldn't have used any other one, so I put that as not applicable. The usage 3, it's on my sofa at the moment and I use it quite a lot. Overall 3. Wasn't my favourite project I've ever worked on, but also not the worst one I've ever worked on. And it looks quite pretty as well. And lastly is the small crochet chicken that I made. I didn't use a pattern for this, I made my own one up. The yarn wasn't very nice to work with. It was from Hobbycraft. I can't remember exactly what it was called. It just kept breaking. It was just difficult to work with. Usage 2. I have it around the office, but I don't love it. And again, overall is a 2. He's there, but, well, she is there, I think. The chicken is around my office, but doesn't really add anything to my life. It just hangs around. July I finished one project, and that was the Lion Lovey blanket that I made. The pattern was really easy to understand. That was a 5. The yarn was really nice to work with. That was a 5 as well. Usage 5. Again, I don't have children yet, so I'm hoping that it will get used. It's very practical and it's cute as well. And overall I scored it a 4. In August is when I started making my wedding flowers, so there's a lot of flowers on here. So starting with the flowers in August, so I made 13 tulips. The pattern was really good. It was from Hook OK. The yarn was cotton from Hobie, so that was 5. The usage is 5 because it was for my wedding, and they are now on display. Everyone who came to the wedding who had a role to play also got a flower of some sort. And overall it was a 5. Now this will probably be quite boring because a lot of these are very, very similar. So the lilies, I made 4 of them. Again, the pattern was a 5. I used the same yarn, so 5. Usage 5 and overall 5. The wrist flowers I made for my mum and my mother-in-law. I made 2 of them. The pattern was a 4. I made them using a YouTube tutorial and I got confused. The yarn was the same cotton, so 5. Usage 5, overall 5. Next was the Donkey Lovey. The pattern was fine, so I gave it a 5. The yarn was a 4. It was twisted yarn, so at some points when I was doing the amigurumi it split, which wasn't great. Usage 5. It was for a friend's baby who is due soon, and hopefully they get a lot of use out of it, so overall 5. It looked really cute as well. Next was origami rosebuds. I made 12 of them for the wedding. The pattern was a 5. I really enjoyed doing it. It didn't look as intricate as the Hook OK rosebuds, but I really enjoyed doing it. It was really easy and they all look a little bit different, which is really nice. So the pattern is a 5. I used the same yarn, so that's a 5. Usage 5, overall 5. Next I made one big leaf using the Hook OK pattern. Pattern 5, yarn 5, usage 5 and overall 5. Then we have September. So I made 2 different cactuses. The first one had 2 cactuses next to each other. The pattern was a 5, yarn 5, usage 5 because I have them in the bathroom and they look beautiful. Overall 4. Not life-changing, but they look pretty cute. The next was a cactus I made with a flower. Again, the pattern was a 5, yarn 5 because I managed to use up a little ball of green that I had lying around. Usage 5, overall 4. Then I made 12 various leaves and foliage for my bouquet and the bouquet for my sister and my sister-in-law. The pattern was a 5, yarn was a 5, usage 5, overall 5. Then I made a tuft mushroom from a kit I got in 2023 as part of their trick or treat package. The pattern was a 4 just because I got confused on one part of it. I could have probably Googled it. I could have reached out to them to get some support. I didn't, and that is on me. And the reason I didn't is because I just wanted to get it done. I was impatient. However, I know that from speaking to Kerry, if I'd have had any difficulties, she would have been able to help out if I'd have reached out. Her and the team. The yarn was a 5. The usage is a 5 because it was part of a present for my husband, and overall it's 5 because I love the colours and it just looks really cute as well. You can see me again. Next was a little rickarumi snail that I added to the top of the tuft mushroom. This was a 4. Now I can't remember exactly the details, but I know that there was something that I struggled with. I think it was the antenna or the sort of undermouth part. You needed to add a couple of stitches to shape it and it didn't make much of a difference, I have to say, but it still looks cute. Yarn was a 5. I used the leftover tuft yarn from the mushroom. Usage 5. Again, it's on display. It was a present to my husband, so it sits by the side of his bed, and overall 5. It's really cute. Next was a work in progress that was in my pile for ages, like months and months and months, and that was socks. The pattern was Joe's Cozy Toes, and I made sister socks, so they were the opposite of each other, if that makes sense, in colours. The pattern was a 4. I put it off for ages because I thought it would be really complicated, and it wasn't. I'd finished the first sock, it just took me ages to finish the second, so wasn't the easiest pattern I've ever done. It was definitely not the worst. The main reason that I wasn't a massive fan is because you have to count the rows, as with all socks, but I prefer patterns where you don't have to count all of your stitches and count your rows as you go round. The yarn was a 5. It was from Felt Fusion. It was great, looks really nice, hand dyed, lovely. Usage is a 4. I've worn them a few times. Again, this is more about me than the socks or the pattern, but I tend not to wear handmade socks as much. I don't reach for them because they're not stored in the same place as my normal socks, and I'm more aware about wearing them because when they need to be washed, they need to be washed more delicately, I guess. So yeah, overall 4. Next is the Toft hat that I made. Now, the main pattern was fairly easy to understand. However, when I made it, it was much too short for myself. So something went wrong either with my calculations, or I'd measured my head wrong, or maybe my gauge was a lot tighter than what they'd used. But I marked that as a 3. The yarn was Toft and I stash busted as well, so that's a 5. Usage 3, again, I have only made this fairly recently, but I haven't used it as much because it is quite tight and quite short. I have added to the rim of it so that it's longer, but I haven't used it too much yet. Overall 4. And lastly, for September, it was a very busy month, can you tell? I made a present advent calendar. So when I'd initially made this, I had made it to be a garland with presents on it, but I realised I wouldn't really use it that much, so I made it into an advent calendar instead. Pattern, didn't use one, I made it up, so not applicable. Yarn was a 5. I used quite a lot of scrap yarn, and I used quite a lot of yarn. It was cotton, so it was smooth to use as well. Usage 3, it can obviously only be used once a year. I didn't use it this year because the holes are quite small, and I've been concentrating so much on putting videos up that it wasn't my priority to use it. Overall 3. In October I got married, so it wasn't a particularly crochet-ish month for me. I'd spent obviously a lot of time crocheting flowers for the wedding, so crocheting was probably one of the last things on my list to do. But I made 2 projects. So the first one was a flower for my mum. I made a Carder lily. The pattern was a 5. It was from Hook OK, so it was really easy to understand, and she has a video as well. The yarn was the same cotton I used for my wedding flower, so that was a 5. Usage 4, overall 4. It looks really pretty. I need to make some more leaves for it for my mum, but I'm sorry mum if you're watching, I'm a bit crocheted out of flowers. They're not really my priority at the moment, but I'll try and get some more to you soon. And I made some more flowers for the wedding, which were forget-me-nots. I made 4 bunches, 1 for myself, 1 for my sister-in-law, and 2 for my other sister because I used a different yarn and it was slightly thicker, so I made 2 bunches. The pattern was a 5. It was really addictive and it was really easy to understand. The yarn was a 4. I took a point away because, again, the yarn I used for my sister, it was acrylic and it was not very nice to work with at all. It hurt my hands, so it wasn't enjoyable, but the cotton was. Usage 5 because I used it in the wedding, and 5 overall, again, because it was used in the wedding. Now getting into November, I made 2 projects. So the first was a blanket for my sister for Christmas. It was the Lottie and Albert chunky rainbow blanket, I think it's called. I rated the pattern a 2 because I really wasn't a fan. It wasn't the pattern itself, it was more so working with all the yarns and just the way that it was put together. It was difficult, and my blanket turned out a different shape than what it should have been. So wasn't a fan. That was a 2. Yarn was a 3. The yarn itself was fine. Where I was using 6 balls at the same time, it kept on knotting, it kept on causing problems, so I wasn't a massive fan of that either, to be honest. Usage 4. I'm sure that my sister, when she receives it, will really, really love it, and hopefully, because it's acrylic, it will last for a very long time. And overall it's a 4. Then I made a scarf for my husband's auntie for her birthday. The pattern was just a standard crochet scarf, single crochet. It was a 4. It was fine. It was a lot of faffing around just because the yarn was super chunky, I think. So I had to faff around quite a lot to see how long or how wide I could make the scarf so that it would still be usable as a scarf, if that makes sense. The yarn was a 3. Again, it was very thick, so that contributed a lot to the time that it took to make it, just because I had to keep on ripping it back, frogging it back, so that I could restart and maybe do one less chain so that I could make the scarf thicker, longer. Just because of the thickness of the yarn, it really impacted how much I used at a time. Hopefully that makes sense. Usage, hopefully it's very usable, so it'll be a 4. Overall, 4. She hasn't received it yet, so hopefully she likes it. And then lastly, on to December's projects. Again, I will be going through these in more detail in January when I do podcast 18, I think. But just for now, the bare bones. To start with, I made some more paper chains. I have made loads. I think I counted something like 30 something new chains. So I've done quite a lot. Again, pattern 5, yarn 5. I used quite a variety of different yarns. It's great for stash busting still. Usage 5, overall 4. I needed a plastic bag organiser. Sometimes when we go to the shops we forget our bags, so I needed somewhere to put them so that they weren't just everywhere around the house. The pattern was a 3. I did have to adjust a few things on it because it was not the right size. It was too narrow to start off with, so I had to readjust the pattern myself so that it would be usable for me. Maybe that's more to do with the yarn that I used. Yarn was a 4. It wasn't painful on my hands, but it wasn't necessarily comfortable, so it was just sort of mid-range. But it's recycled, so that's very good. Usage 5 is very usable now, and overall 3. Again, not life-changing. Don't love it, don't hate it. It's useful. Next, I made 4 robins from a kit from Woolly Chick. The pattern was a 4. There was a couple of things that I had a few problems with. Again, that might just be due to my understanding of things, but I had to alter the pattern myself just to make it work. The yarn was a 4. I believe that it might have been hand dyed, and it was really pretty as well. It was, going by feeling, it was 75 merino, 25% nylon, I think is the usual makeup, but I don't know. Usage 5. I have made 4 robins from the kit. There is enough to make some more. I am giving the kit to my mother-in-law so that she can do some, because I've only used sort of half of what was given to me, so there's still plenty of usage in it. I just don't have enough steam to make loads more robins. I don't need them. Overall 4. Next was a scarf that I literally just finished about an hour ago. So it was my husband's auntie's birthday in October. I didn't buy her a present, or we don't usually do presents. However, I thought she might be a little bit left out because her sister is getting a present. And it's a great excuse to use some yarn as well. So The pattern was, again, just a standard scarf crocheted up. Pattern was a 4, not life-changing, but it works. Yarn was probably a 3. I used Wool and the Gang yarn, but it was more like roving, if that makes sense. So I have a feeling it will probably bobble quite a lot. Where when I was crocheting with it, it kept sort of separating and going quite fluffy as well, where one part of the roving would end but the rest would continue, so it just had like random bits of yarn sticking off it, which wasn't great. I had to go past with scissors and trim it all so that it looked like a new scarf and not one that I had bought secondhand. Not that there's a problem with that. Usage, hopefully she gets quite a lot of usage from it, so a 4, overall 4. If anything, I would say the scarf is a bit short, but I used the yarn that I had to make it as long as I could. So, and last project that I finished so far for 2024, it probably will be the last project I finish, was an octopus that I made with Toft for the Charles Darwin crochet along. The pattern was a 4.5. There was one instruction that I struggled with, but that was due to my understanding of the pattern and not the pattern itself. Apart from that, it was very, very clear. The yarn was a 4. It was a bit difficult to work with because we were using embroidery thread. So if you've used embroidery thread before, you know that it has 6 different strands. So as you were crocheting with a tiny, tiny hook, the yarn kept on splitting. So that was a little bit difficult, but it looks really nice. So usage 5. He will be going on display with the finished Charles Darwin when he has finished. Overall 5. Again, it's super cute. I will probably make more octopuses, and yeah. So that is a very quick run through of all of the projects I made in 2024. I hope that I'm not forgetting something, but it would not surprise me if I have. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. And if you want to, leave a comment below of how many projects you've finished this year, whether it's crochet or sewing or something different. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, take care. Bye.